Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to TheStreet Live. I'm Jeff Marks, standing on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with Jim Cramer. Jim, we're seeing a little bit of a rebound in the markets today. What do you think's going on?
I want to be careful because I still think that big cap tech has hangover. There are people who want to make out of the stocks at the end of the quarter. They want to show that they're in a different kind of stock. They're in a Boeing, okay, or they're in a bank. Wells Fargo is a good example, because it's bouncing back even though it's not supposed to. And they want to show that they own less Apple. Particularly, they want to show less Amazon. Because Amazon, which, by the way, had this new device that people are critical of, that walks around and follows people.
The Astro.
The Astro. Yeah. So, I mean, be careful of those. But it's not a time to be careful companies that you think are going to have a good fourth quarter, like Boeing.
Yeah, let's talk about Boeing. I'm glad you brought it up. So, big upgrade over at Bernstein. They go to a overweight outperform rating, and we also see we saw a executive of the company said that the test flight of the 737 Max in China, it went off without a hitch.
Right. Now, we know that our country and China do not have good relations anymore. We also know that there's still issues with the 787. There's a lot of issues with Boeing. And remember, I've said it's no longer a great company. It's a good company. But there's strong demand. No one's questioning that. And if you read the Bernstein piece, it's also upgrade Airbus. And it's really about travel inflection, which is something, by the way, that Scott Kirby said today for United. The travel inflection is here. So therefore, you're going to need Boeing planes. I remain faithful to this stock, but the company needs to show a level of leadership in American manufacturing that has lost ever since Dennis Muhlenberg.
Now, I know the overseas travel, that has been a little bit slower to recover, yes. But was the U.S. announcing that they're easing travel restrictions with the U.K., with Europe? That was a big deal.
A lot. I mean, look at Macy's ever since that went up. Remember, Macy's is very New York-centric. Everything is going to change if we allow travelers and cross-border. The thing that has been most irritating is that they're more vaccinated than we are. And Portugal is the most vaccinated country on earth. Thank you, Dr. Topol. Working collaboration, the medical, the government, and corporations. We're just being seen corporations. The reason why I talked to Scott Kirby was that they basically are firing everybody that's not vaccinated. And we talked about religious exemptions, which, by the way, the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Pope yesterday saying, don't show up, basically, if you're not vaccinated. The religious exemptions should be few and far between and are overly used, according to a lot of the CEOs.
All right, Jim, let's turn our attention back to what's going on in D.C. on Capitol Hill. So we have the debt ceiling looming still, no resolution there yet. We also have Jerome Powell, another day of testimony. So how do you balance between what's going on within Congress and also the Fed?
Debt ceiling, I know that Janet Yellen has used rhetoric, Treasury Secretary, that's very disturbing. Obviously, we know that from David Kostin's work at Goldman that it has not really ever impacted the market. I took umbrage to what Senator Warren said about Jay Powell being dangerous. I thought that was quite unfair. The banks are the best capitalized they've ever been. So why should we necessarily come down on them with hobnail boots? I mean, Jay's doing his job. And I think that if you want to criticize Jay, you'd have to criticize him from the point of view of the right and say, you know what, he's spending too much time trying to equalize wages, particularly among African Americans, when we should be looking at all people equally. I only mentioned that Republicans is that has never been the idea that you're going to do that. It was not why he was appointed, believe me. President Trump did not appoint him for that. But this is a man with a heart. This is a man who recognizes that inflation is a cost that you may have to take in order to be able to make it so there's more equality in this country. And I think that that's what Senator Warren, when she called him dangerous, was very unfair about, because he's the first Fed chief we've had who actually cares about equality that I can remember.
All right, Jim, let's turn our attention back to earnings. Yesterday, the semis, they were being tossed out left and right. There were some downgrades also in anticipation of Micron's quarter. They reported last night. Quarter looked fine. Guidance a little bit weaker than expected. But you were just telling me that, it's Micron not being down as much. It's not down a lot today, and that's a positive sign.
Eight target price cuts. And Sanjay Mehrotra, whom I just spoke to, was talking about the new Micron, which is something I believed in, which is it's now high performance computing, it's 5G, it's AI, It's the more involved in the food chain. PC, it's still 74% DRAM, but not the lower DRAM. And that the problems with the first quarter have to do with other semiconductor companies that couldn't make their chips, which therefore made it so that he made fewer chips. And he says that that's going to be solved in the second quarter. I know that there are a lot of people who believed and were short going into the quarter, betting that he would cut guidance and betting that he cut gross margins. He barely cut gross margins. And while he cut guidance for the first quarter, he didn't cut for the year. So therefore, the big negative, the big short for Micron may have run its course.
Can we make any quick extrapolations about what he said about the PC market, data center market for a stock like AMD or NVIDIA?
AMD
Two positions
6,
in Action Alerts
AMD
Plus.
down 6 yesterday. Seems an overreaction to big cap worries involving a slowdown. This is not Sherwin-Williams. This is not paint. NVIDIA is so ahead of the game. The only reason why, I question whether they can get the ARM deal. But remember, NVIDIA is metaverse, and metaverse is the great secular trend of our time.
All right, I'm glad you brought up Sherwin-Williams because 3 weeks ago they pre-announced a lower than expected third quarter revenue result. And then last night they said that revenue will come in even on the bottom end of that previously guided range. And they took down their full year guidance as well. More supply chain issues, more inflationary pressures.
I mean, look, we have a problem in this country. We have a concentration of all the companies that make plastics in the southeast portion of our country, which also happens to be a portion of the country that has, other than say like Oregon, some of the craziest weather. And it's where the natural gas is, so it totally makes sense. You don't want the fractionators in other parts of the country. I mean, if you take a look, by the way, one of the reasons why this natural gas problem is that there have been 5 pipelines that have been canceled from the Marcellus. One was going right through a farm I used to own, and that was defeated. So I just think that you have, when you have that concentration in one place and you have a storm, you're going to have real supply disruptions. And that's what's bothering Sherwin-Williams. They did make it very clear that demand remains very strong. Now, if rates keep going up, that's going to you won't get strong demand because that'll make it so affordability is not so great for a house. But right now, the reason why Sherwin-Williams is not down huge is strictly because the demand is very strong.
All right, Jim, before we go for today, I want to get your thoughts on Lucid Motors. They announced production of the Lucid Air began today. They plan on shipping that, delivering that to customers next month. So this follows that huge announcement from Ford yesterday about their big battery investment, $11 billion in partnership with SK. Yeah. Let's get your take on what are the names in EVs to watch going forward.
It's really important to recognize that if Lucid's at this valuation, which is absurd, I happen to like Tesla, by the way, even though like Musk was throwing cold water on the stock. He does that. But Fisker is too cheap. Fisker's beautiful. Bill McDermott's on the board. The Ocean's great looking. It's an asset-light model. They're letting Magna do it. Lucid is an asset-heavy model, and I don't know how many they'll produce. I think that Lucid's too expensive. Although I've driven in a Lucid. It's an amazing car. I mean, just incredible. But I want to come back to Ford. Not enough made yesterday of the fact that they are going to be able to make twice the batteries of Tesla. The big gating point has been batteries. Ford can't meet the demand for any of its EVs, and it's just going to have to do everything it can over the next 3-5 years to build enough to be able to sate the demand. It is that strong. Now, people continue to, just like Ford, because it can't do the earnings breakout because it can't get the semis. I was talking with Sanjay Mehrotra about that. And the problem is, look, it's very simple. The chips that they need, the foundries don't make a lot of money on. And, unless the foundries come up with a way to be able to work in conjunction with the companies to say, listen, we will pay a lot more for these chips, then the shortage isn't going to end and you won't get the Ford pop that we want until the second or third quarter of next year.
All right, let's leave it right there for today. That's a show for today. We're going to go to the Action Alerts Plus video right after this. Thank you very much for tuning in.